Hines, and welcome to the Young Senators Facebook Live podcast. We're going to have an interesting night tonight. We're going to learn a lot of things about the origin of go-go. So, having said that, let's get right into it. To fully appreciate what the Young Senators accomplished, let's briefly look at society in the historical context of the times. Go-go comes from the French word discotheque, meaning a nightclub for dancing to live and recorded music. Popular dance music characterized by hypnotic rhythm, repetitive lyrics, and electronically produced sounds. The year was 1964. President Lyndon B. Johnson signed the Civil Rights Bill. It also began the year of the British invasion, the second one since colonial days. Only Motown could hold the British sound at bay. After several years of steady growth, Motown was hitting its stride with Where Did Our Love Go by the Supremes and The Way You Do the Things You Do by the Temptations. Back in 1962, the Motown Review's first stop on the tour had been the Howard Theater in Washington, D.C. By 1965, President Johnson had signed the Voting Rights Act, and African Americans continued to make great strides in racial equality. Richard Burton left and later divorced his wife, Sybil Burton, for Elizabeth Taylor during the filming of Cleopatra. Sybil Burton opened the first disco in New York called Arthur, which would set the stage for dance clubs in America. They would later open one in Washington at the Warner Building at 13th and East Streets. And to this mix came television shows like Shindig, Hullabaloo, and Hollywood A Go-Go, which probably inspired Smokey Robinson and the Miracles' hit Going to a Go-Go. The young senators were honing their chops and still going through the steps of learning the music industry. So in 1964, seven teenagers combined for their musical talents to form the Young Senators Band. The members were Frank Hooker on keyboards, Leroy Fleming on sax, Jimmy Dugan on percussion and vocals, Warren L. Worthy on drums, Warren Smitty Smith on bass, Derek Davis on guitar, and Charles on trumpet. Rehearsing every day, the band became ready to share their talents, but being new to the music scene, gigs were sparse. So Frank Hooker's cousin, Eleanor Hooker Heron, who was their earliest fan and biggest supporter, landed a very important gig that jump-started the band's career. Eleanor talked the owner of Mr. P's Lounge into giving the group a chance to play at his club. At George Avenue and Decatur Streets, Mr. P's now convenience store. He auditioned the group, and the rest is history. Eleanor became a very important figure in Washington, D.C. in her own right as an organizer and supporter of community groups, causes. She went on to become Miss Senior DC 2017, and she's still Frank Hooker's little cousin, Miss Eleanor Hooker Heron. So now we would like to welcome the members of the Young Senators, Mr. Frank Hooker, Mr. Jimmy Dugans, Mr. Warren L. Jones, and Drummer Johnson.
What's up?
Hey, how you doing?
Good morning.
I'm doing fine.
So now that we have all you guys on board, can you give us a little information about how the Young Senators were formed and how you came about really honing the sound of your music?
Frank, go ahead.
Hey, yeah, Young Senators. We were really from Washington D.C. and actually, Jimmy and I sang in a singing group together. We called the Trojans.
Yes, sir.
And we were rolling. Actually, I was playing the guitar too and singing during that time. But I ran into actually a guy by the name of Harry Young, who was managing the Young Senators at the time. And at the time, actually, they had another organist by the name of Derek David playing with the group. And actually, they used to practice in Derek David's dad funeral home business he had. He had an organ downstairs, so that's where they would practice. But and one thing led to another. Derek David decided to leave the group, and as a result, they asked me to actually become a part of the group, the Young Senators. It was at the time we were rehearsing Leroy's house, and we would be
Yes.
rolling.
Yes, sir.
We rehearsed at Leroy's house and really developed an unusual sound. It was just like people would come in the neighborhood and hear us practice. We'd be cranking back then. And I think it was through our dedication and willingness to keep grinding until you make it. That was our mindset. We were gonna make it. But
Yes,
we didn't
sir.
know a sound in DC. And I don't know how far you want me to go, but I'll just start that part off, and I'll talk a little more about the go-go and where it started a little later on. But we developed then, and was actually, I don't know if y'all want to get into it now, but the first go-go was really
No,
the nice.
wait, Frank. Wait, Frank. We're gonna cover that.
Okay.
We're gonna cover that. We're
I'm
gonna
so
cover
excited.
But tell me how you all brought Jimmy into the group.
Yeah. Well, I asked Jimmy to come to the group because, I knew Jimmy could sing. I knew he had rhythm and he was soulful, because we sang together. Actually,
Yes, sir.
Jimmy and I were actually high school mates, even with the Dunbar Summer School.
Dunbar Summer School.
Skip over that. But Jimmy and I were just good friends, and we had a fellowship for years. And he loved the Temptations. I love music. I love the guitar and singing and sliding the Family Stones, and I like
Oh,
the
yeah.
old James back during that time. But anyway, Jimmy and I were actually singing together, and I told Jimmy, "Come on, man, I'm going with the Young Senators, and come on with me." And Jimmy, being my friend.
And still friend.
And still friends to this day. We cranked up together, and so I brought him in the group, and he played the congas. He sang first tenor. He had that sweet Eddie Kendricks voice, so it was a perfect fit for the group, and we rolled ever since. I'm gonna just keep it right there.
Okay, so can we hear from some of the other guys, and you all explain how you all came into the group?
Well, for me, it was kind of like, little signs, little road signs along the way. There was a guy named Pop Jones, because we were all like Frank. I know Frank was a singer, doo-wopper. Jimmy was a doo-wopper. I was singing in the doo-wop group. And there was this guy in the neighborhood, lived on S Street, I believe. His name was Pop Jones. And so Pop says, he just, one time passing, he goes, you ever heard of a group called the Young Senators? And I went, yeah, like 7th and T. Yeah, I remember that little song. And so he says, well, they're looking for a bass player. I went, okay. And so, about a week or two later, his brother, Andrew, says, you know the Young Senators, right? I went, yeah, I heard of them. I heard they're a nice little group. He says, well, I heard they look for a bass player. And at that time, I was just doing some sessions around town, doing studio stuff. And, I'm going, what is this group, the Young Senators? What is that about? And so I'm also working for the DC government at the time. And I quit my job. And then one day, it was like 2 weeks later, my little girl is crying. My wife is going, it's time to make some more money. And so I get this knock on the door, and it's Leroy Fleming. And he says, you Warren L. Jones? And I'm going, yeah. And he goes, well, I'm with the Young Senators, and we're looking for a bass player. Are you interested? And I went, wow, this is amazing. And so, yeah, I went to their rehearsal, and they blew me away. I was just standing there going, wow, these guys are great. And then, I'd heard the Reputation before I even met them. So for me, it was like a very exciting time. It was like, oh yeah, this is a change. This is a great change. So yeah, that's how I got involved with them. And like Frank said, we rehearsed until my fingers hurt, and we rehearsed a lot. And
Yes, indeed.
what made the Young Senators unique was we took we made our own arrangements of music, and I think that's what the people dug. They dug the fact that this sounds like the song, but it really is their treatment. And so that's what made us, I believe, unique to any other group out there.
Mhm.
Drummer?
Yeah.
Well,
Okay. All right. Well, what brought me into the group was first I was a fan, and I would go see the group every Monday night at Brown Manor at a go-go at an established go-go. So I was like a number one fan. I would always stand up front and watch the group intensely, watch everything they did, and so there came a time when they needed a drummer, and I didn't know anybody in the group except, well, I knew Frank, but I also knew Jimmy Dugan. So once I found out that they needed a drummer, and I was a drummer, and I wasn't working, I called Jimmy Dugan. I just rang his phone till he couldn't
He
ring
called
anymore.
me and he wore me
I
out.
told him, Jimmy, just check me out. Just give me a tryout. Just check me out. Please, please, please.
He wore me out.
So I did everything. I prayed on it and everything. And they finally gave me a chance. And I kept my fingers crossed. And they told me to come on board. And it was one of the best days of my life when I heard the group say, come aboard.
well, I thought I was going to get through this without putting my glasses on, but I see that I'm not. So here we are. But Frank, you and I actually met around 1966. Frank Hooker was working at a place called Walter Silberg's, which is where 14th and the Park is now, right across from Franklin Park. And I used to go in there because I was looking for some pinstripe shirts. And he would say, well, can I help you? I said, Frank, I'm looking for some more pinstripe shirts. I got to get me a government girl. So he kept talking about the group. He kept talking about the group and talking about the young citizens. I said, man, you got to come out and see us play. So the interesting thing is, when I first went to see them play, as Frank was going to mention about the first go-go in DC. So let's kind of cover that ground so we can get up to where we are with that. The first go-go in DC in 1966. The first go-go opened in DC, which was Thursday night at the Chez Maurice on 9th and U Street. It became so popular because Twiggy was in, the Thin was in, and the miniskirts and the little gorgeous go-go boots, they were the fashion rage. And the first go-go girl that we knew of, per se, was a young lady named Ann Farr, who danced at the Chez Maurice. She was a student at Howard University. And her parents had to come down to watch her dance in a little French costume to make sure that it wasn't obscene. But the go-go became so popular that they moved it to 10th and K, the Knights Columbus at 10th and K. I lived at 906 K Street. Now, for all of you Chuck Brown fans, don't bombard the caller's line. But the first go-go band to play go-go's in Washington, D.C. was a white band from Baltimore named Tommy Van and the Echoes.
That's right.
At that time, they all played top 40 music. Carl Mr. C. Henson from WOL Radio was the DJ. Now, Tommy Van ultimately left Tommy Van and the Echoes and started another group called Tommy Van and the Professionals. But the Echoes were so popular that it continued to tour as and the Echoes. So they played the boat rides, they played cabarets, and everything else that you can imagine in between. Now, go-go's at that time was so popular because go-go itself was the function. It was the dance. It wasn't used to describe the music. It was the function, the activity that we were going to. Because people who are much older than us will remember that in D.C. you had dance halls. You had the Majestic Ballroom. You had Art Fellows Hall. You had Turner's Arena. So, and you had little places like WST. And of course, most of you will remember when Tina Rama first came on the air.
Wow.
But the first go-go lodge per se was the Knights of Columbus at 10th and K. And as I said, I lived at 906 K Street. So we would go to the all types of places, the Panorama Room, the Glen Arden Civic Center. They had cabarets at Presidential Arms. Now, here's the key to that. as African Americans were beginning to enjoy more of the pleasures of American society, before that, we could only go to cabarets at WST Music Hall, which is now the 930 Club. That was a Masonic hall on U Street. We actually had stepped up when we were able to go to the Presidential Arms at between 12th and 13th and 14th and G. Most of you guys know it as the Gemma Ballroom. But prior to that, you had to go to these little tight places. Maybe the church would rent you a spot. But here's what happened with the with all of the go-go's that were happening every night, almost every night of the week. We were going on Monday nights to the Club Casino on Pennsylvania Avenue in Baltimore, Maryland. This was long before Odell's. But the Young Senators took over Monday nights at the Knights of Columbus in Burn Manor on Southern Avenue in Prince George's County, Maryland. I'll let you guys take it from here.
Right. That was the thing. Monday night go-go, Brian Manor. That was the big time go-go. The house was always packed.
Packed.
Girls would line up because they said we were good. I don't know. I'm gonna leave that there. But we'd always pack the house. We cranking, and it was actually a guy that was working with me. He was a member of this club. And it was him. He was actually a member of. Well, he worked at Surrey's Men's Shop too. Walter Silberg after the riot became Surrey's Men's Shop.
Okay.
And I was working at Surrey's. He's right what he was saying about Walter Silberg. That's my man. I talked to his daughter yesterday. Okay?
Man.
Yeah. But we worked together at Surrey's Men's Shop, and he said, man, we're gonna do a Monday night go-go. Now listen, this is the way it worked. And I said, okay, man. I said, well, my group, the Young Senators. And he said, yeah. Well, we started opening up at that Monday night go-go every night. I think they were called, Jim, you remember the name of his group, but it was a group of guys. Jim Robinson was his name.
The Revolving 15.
That's it.
The Revolving 15.
Revolving 15. That was the name of the group of guys. Jim Robinson was the guy working with me at that time at Sherry's Men's Shop. And man, and once we started working there on Monday nights, woo!
Hey Frank. Hey Frank,
right.
you remember the first time we played there with Tommy Van and the Professionals?
Tommy Van and the Professionals.
They blew us away.
Yeah, because they had all the big equipment. Yeah, they had all the equipment back then.
Equipment
They
galore.
had the big amps,
Yes, sir.
We were funky, but we didn't have the big amps yet.
Yeah, we didn't have power. We didn't have that
was
power,
funky.
man. But when we got the power, we went back out there and they said, "Oh, listen to this." And boy, we were doing some Sly, some Temptations, pour the house down, man.
So to educate the audience, tell the audience how you all went from the matching suits from like that Temptations era and the way bands were dressing at the time, and how you get more so into that funky garb.
Well, the first time I saw them, like they had these Big Apple hats on, like that was, we kind of like created this kind of culture, like everybody was wearing the Big Apple, like Donny Hathaway, and then but all the Young Senators, we all had these Big Apple hats, and we were walking around, and we were like dressing really strange, and everybody was like looking at us like really strange, like who are these guys? And they would come to the Go-Go's, and then all of a sudden the people that came to the Go-Go's were like dressing like us. So there was this culture. There was this culture that we created, kind of, like by osmosis, and it's like it wasn't an event. But prior to that, I saw the Young Senators at Constitution Hall, and that's when I realized that they were such a great band, because they opened for like major acts, and I'm going, Jesus! I said, these guys, they're something. So yeah, that was the beginning of the fashion. Everybody was wearing the bell bottoms. We were like we started wearing the platform shoes. You remember that, right? I even had some hot pants. I mean, it was like I'm going, oh my, I'm thinking about it now. I'm going, I was really spacey. And, the Young Senators, you know, everybody had their own kind of unique kind of style.
Yeah, yeah.
But together, it was magic. You know, it was like, who are these crazy guys? Then we made some music. You know what I mean?
So tell us a little about your first manager. Many people get into the music industry and they don't learn the business of music. Everybody thinks that they'll have a hit record and then they'll be stars going to make $1 million or millions of dollars and buy islands or palaces somewhere. But tell us a little bit about your first manager and the early members of the Young Senators throughout the years and why they left the group.
Well, you want me to collaborate on that? Or you want to take it, Frank?
Well, I'll start off.
Okay, go ahead.
Harry Young was our manager.
He was a good manager.
He was a great. I have to give him his props. Harry Young was a great manager. I mean, he supported the band. He had us working and gigging. You know, he was respectable. He was a fighter for us. He was respected even in the city. You know, because you know he was dedicated to what he was doing. I have to give him his props. You know, he kept us all together. He wasn't really a drug person or anything like that in that season. You know, but he kept us all together, kept our heads together. I mean, to this day, I stay in touch with Harry. He was a great man. So I'm gonna put that out there first.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Jimmy.
Well, what I can say about him is he was a great manager at the time. And at the time, we needed management.
Yeah.
We needed management bad. And he was on the scene and he took us on his wing and we flew like eagles. I mean, I learned from him. I learned a heck of a lot from him. And I went and bought these books, The Business of Music. I started reading up on it and reading and getting this book and that book. I built my library, a library of books. And till this day, I still have those books at home. And some of the things were missing, he was missing. It's not that hard to see and believe, but he was missing some parts. One part was taking the band and getting a record deal, promoting the record, getting a record deal. Now, sure, we had a record. Was it Jungle? Came out on Innovation Records. You remember
How did that come about, Jimmy? How did you come about making the record Jungle?
I can tell you about that. Philip Gilbo wrote this song, and we were on the bus coming back from Detroit, and Charlie Neal was driving the bus, a regular bus, you know, so we had equipment under the bottom of the bus, and we all were sitting up top. And Philip Gilbo sat next to me. He said, I got this song called Jungle. And I wasn't ready to hear that. I was like, man, get some sleep. Leave me alone, man. He just kept coming to me. I got this song called Way Down, y'all know, booty butts in the middle of jungle. He used to call us booty butts. Booty butts. Can you imagine that?
Flubby dubs.
Yeah, flubby dubs and booty butts. So he used to call out, never will forget it. So finally, I got tired of hearing from him. I just got sick and tired, man. I got this song called Jungle. And Way Down, y'all. I said, man, please leave me alone. So I guess he went back to Warren L and the rest of them and bugged them. But that's how the song came about. It was written by Philip Gilbo. He's gone now, bless his soul. But that's all I can say about that.
Well, Jimmy, tell us a little more about some of the components of the song, because it incorporated a lot of Afro-Cuban Latin beats.
Yeah, okay.
So tell us about the inspiration for that and how that ties into go-go, what go-go ultimately became in DC.
Okay, when I was playing congas, I play congas, and I was listening to Carlos Santana, Oye Como Va, and all that other stuff, and then finally I saw them at Woodstock. The whole band went to see, the Slime was playing. Anyway, we went down to see Woodstock. So I like what the conga players were playing. He had two conga players. So I incorporated that beat. I call it's a Afro-Cuban beat. It came from, I don't know where it originated from, but Afro-Cuban beat. So I incorporated that into Jungle, and it kind of fit. I said, yeah, this fits real good. So Warren L came in with the bass and drummer with the drums and Frank with the guitar and everybody playing, and that's how it came about.
Okay.
Yeah,
well, you know,
It was.
I'm sorry, go on.
Kind of put our arrangement to Phil's. Because Phil used to play with Ray Charles, right?
Yeah.
And
Okay.
he was a little bit older than us, and so
Much older.
we just thought, oh man, this is really outdated. This is kind of like, this is real old school music. You know what I mean? Because the way he attacked, the way he approached the song was like, way down yonder, got a girl over there, and we were going, man, no,
man,
no,
get out
no.
of my face, man.
Yeah, so we kind of like Jimmy said, we just start molding it and putting it together piece by piece. And I forgot to say this, one of the prerequisites for me getting a job with the Young Senators was, of course I was a bass player. I've been a bass player since I was 15, 16. But they said, oh no, you gotta sing, man. And I went, oh my goodness, I gotta sing. I don't know if I can do that and play bass.
Remember Frank?
People
he had
don't
to sing.
understand playing the bass and singing is really hard.
So he surprises.
Yeah, and so I went home and I really practiced a lot to sing and play. And so, when Jungle was introduced, they said, "You're singing it," and I'm going, "No!"
He said, "You can do it."
And they encouraged me, and so that's how Jungle came into.
Hey, now, you remember the first song you sang with us?
Yeah,
remember
Do Your Thing. Huh? Do Your Thing by Watts 103rd.
There it is. Yes, sir.
Man.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Well, but to get back to Jungle, call and response became a major component element in go-go. So as really as in gospel music, the field songs, the slave songs. So tell us about how you utilize the call and response in that song to get the audience involved in the audience participation.
Well, that's 1L.
Go ahead, 1L.
Well, basically, it came from a feeling because, like, I was winging it. The structure of the song was like just really simple verse about, his girl left him, and he was like stranded in the jungle, sort of like that. And so near the end of the song, I kind of ran out of ideas. I didn't know what to do, so I just went, I just started singing, ad-libbing, and then we trying to like overdub the ad-libs, and I went, oh yeah, and they went, oh yeah, and I went, hey, and Frank went, hey, and that was the call and response. It sort of happened kind of automatic, you know how we do, just
Yes, sir. This is what we do.
It was an automatic response, and that's how that call and response thing got started.
So now, drummer, your job as a drummer is usually locking it in the pocket. So tell us about how you were able to do that, keep the band on point, with Frank with the keyboards, and particularly Jimmy with the congas, but you also had Leroy Fleming on the sax. So tell us about what your job was like in locking everything and keeping it in the pocket.
Well, going back to the making of the song, recording of the song Jungle, that was my first experience in a professional studio. So at first, I was scared to death. We said, we're going to the studio and we're going to do the song. In addition to that, I had only been in the group for about maybe 2 months. So I was trying to learn a lot of information quickly. And then they came with the killer saying, now we're going into the studio. So it was just a lot of hard practicing and concentration and just trying to do my best, really, and following instructions that I was told. So that's my experience with the recording of Jungle.
Okay. Now, a lot of people don't realize that Washington D.C. U Street has always been known as the Black Broadway. So we know the area around 14th, and you were allowed the clubs, Club Safari where Lena Horne, Billie Holiday, and people like that played. But you guys made a record about 7th and T. That's the home of the Howard Theater, Cecilia's Restaurant, and all the little, clubs up and down that strip. The Wings and Things, the Mile Long Sandwich Shop. So tell tell the
You're
audience a
taking us
little
back.
bit about what inspired you guys to record Seventh and T.
Frank?
Yeah, 17 was an inspirational song. You know, Leroy Fleming was our sax player at the time, and it really, we just wanted to set a mood of DC. You know, put that mood, just dun dun, like being in a big city. Dun dun. I mean, we just had to have a little groove to it, you know. And so we kind of laid that in a certain pocket, you know, so we could and it was mostly instrumental, but it had a nice feel to it, you know, because we wanted to represent DC. We actually were a DC band, born in DC, walked 7th and T, went to the Howard Theater, went to high schools, Roosevelt High School. You know, we
Amen.
represented our city, DC. So 7th and T and us being the Young Senators was a perfect match song for us. You know, that was a great, great song during that season.
Now, the Young Senators were accorded the title the Emperors of Go-Go. Tell us a little bit about that and how that came about.
Well, that came about through the mayor, Marion Barry.
Mhm.
His administration and him named us the Emperors of Go-Go. Sure, Chuck Brown could be labeled as the king or whatever of go-go, but we came before that. We came in the 60s through the 70s, and he gave us that title.
Well, you know, now that you mentioned some of the other bands, I knew of the Soul Searchers. I actually went to school with Donald Tillery, the trumpet player, and he stayed in the band room. A lot of the things that happened back then, you know, a lot of these guys joined bands and they were able to take these instruments home, and rather than get in any kind of bad activity after school, they spent their time like staying in the band room or playing in bands. So I can also remember some of, you know, like EU, Charlie Stevenson. I think he's supposed to be coming on. Anybody knows what time he's coming on? Does anybody know particularly what time Charlie Stevens is coming on? I see there's a time slot for him. Has he checked in yet? Well, if he's not here, I know him very well and I know that era. So I like to share a little bit about the other bands that were around so you can actually get an idea of what you guys did in comparison to those bands.
Mm-hmm.
I was talking to a good friend of mine yesterday, Linda Wills, my fellow promotion buddy, and she mentioned to me that Charlie Stevens, Charlie Moreland, a guy named Bruce Bennett, recorded the first record on EU. Charlie Stevens was managing the EU. Now let's kind of bring it to the point that once the bands got away from playing top 40, go-go wasn't particularly well accepted or respected in DC. What you guys did in terms of playing the top 40 and then coming up with your own music in terms of instrumental sounds, that kind of helped it along a lot. But one of the key factors too was that, believe it or not, Calvin Roloff was a chief proponent of go-go, and his wife, Councilwoman Wilhelmina Roloff, and they were sort of like godparents to Charlie Stevenson. So when he was managing EU, and nobody really wanted to be bothered with that kind of go-go music, Charlie kind of smoothed the path for it to be accepted because he also was Ron Dellum's legislative assistant. So you guys now were playing in competition with some of the other bands. Talk about some of those other bands who were kind of on your heels but hadn't quite caught up.
I'll tell you one band, the Aggression. Aggression was tight on us, man. They gave us a little run for our money. You know, they were black brothers, you know, like we were. And they gave us a run for their money, you know. Like I said, that's the only band I know. But we were on shows with everybody. Everybody had that number one spot. They wanted to try to knock us off of number one. So every band tried to go up.
Well, you guys were also opening for a number of national acts. Can you relate some of those?
Pardon me, I didn't hear that.
You guys were also opening for a lot of the national acts that came to town.
Oh,
Can you elaborate on opening for some of those acts?
Frank, you wanted one else?
Yeah, I think it is. You know, we at Constitution Hall. Remember, we did MacArthur's Park.
Yes, sir.
At Constitution Hall. uh, but I know we did a lot. Harry booked us in a lot of different places, but I think a lot of it came later on, though. When we started going with Eddie Kendricks and started working. I don't want to jump the gun until we get to that part. But
yeah, slow down, Frank.
but we played everywhere. Yeah.
Everywhere.
But we really, we used to do MacArthur's Park and a lot
had
of
a
the
version
songs. Like I said, we would bring our own flair, to the songs that we did, And I really think, the uniqueness was the ability to sing
Yes,
and
sir.
play.
Yes, sir.
Sing and play. We had real lead singers,
That was a
Jimmy
key
was singing,
factor to it.
I was singing and Wardell was singing, even drummer was singing. What's up,
Oh,
drummer?
Bobo was singing. Bobo, you can sing. Get into this conversation, Bobo. Come on, man. Yeah.
Yeah, man.
And I think another thing that added to the group's popularity was by me coming in as a fan. I could see the impression of the audience when the group played, and a lot of fans would come to see the group because of their version of several popular songs. A lot of the audience, a lot of the fans loved the way the group would sing MacArthur's Park. They loved the way the group would sing Sly and the Family Stone songs. And it was just a chance to see live music played, the way you really wanted it played. And that was my main goal for coming to the group.
Okay, so moving along, let's sort of, since Frank was chomping at the bits, let's kind of move into the period where you guys went with Eddie Kendricks. And what I like to note at this point is that a lot of people didn't know about the Young Senators because when Eddie Kendricks left the Temptations and they had a chance to go on the road with them, a lot of other groups came in and sort of filled the slot. Not only that, the style of go-go changed because they were moving away from the top 40, away from their own renditions of other people's material, and more so doing original music, which is why a lot of the kids that couldn't afford instruments, they start beating on buckets and cans and whatever else it took to get that sound, because music was not as prevalent in schools as it used to be. So these kids didn't get an opportunity to go to school, learn music, and then translate that into playing in a band after school. They sort of had to start from scratch. So we really have to sort of attribute that to the lack of music education in school or thereof. But speaking now of getting involved with Eddie Kendricks was always considered the romantic idol of the Temptations, because of songs like Get Ready, You're My Everything, particularly Just My Imagination. So, Jimmy, I'd like for you to start this off and tell us how you came about meeting Eddie Kendricks.
Well, I first met Eddie. He was with the Temps. And quite naturally, I was the Young Senators. And we had to do a show at the Monday Night Go-Go. And I told him I couldn't stay long. They were appearing at the Carter Burn Amphitheater. And he called me that day and said he was coming into town and staying at the Watergate and blah, blah, blah. So I went to see him at the Carter Burn. I didn't stay long because I didn't know what to say. I lost my words. I was completely spellbound. This is Eddie Kendricks, man, and everybody was screaming and hollering for him at the backstage. And so finally, I told him I couldn't stay, and I told him I had to go do a gig. And somebody was with him, knew where the Knights of Columbus Burn Manor was, and said, "Well, I'm coming over there tonight." So I went over there that night to the gig, and I told the people at the door, Eddie Kendricks coming here tonight. And I was a laughing stock. Eddie Kendricks, right? So anyway, I told everybody, I even told the group, they laughed at me. I was a laughing stock. So I don't know. The next thing I know, we was on stage playing our little set. And I saw this rush at the door. I didn't know it was Eddie. It was the rush of people at the door. So it started getting close and close. I know it wasn't no fights because was it Prince George's County Police didn't play back then. They didn't play. So I know it wasn't no fight. So the crowd came up to the stage, and lo and behold, it was Eddie Kendricks. He said, "Look, I can't stay long. I can't stay until I got to go." Him and Paul and Cornelius Grant was there, and they had their bodyguards was with them. So I said, "Well, what you want me to do?" He said, "Well, meet me at the hotel tonight." I said, "You sure? By the time we leave, it'll be late." He said, "That's okay. Just come over anyway." So he got out of there. They got out of there and went back to the hotel. So finally, I told Frank. I said, "Frank, you want to go with me?" And that's Frank right there. See, Frank. Yeah. Hey, Frank, what you doing that for? Get your thoughts. So I got Frank. He said, "Yeah, he'll go." So we went over. The two of us went over there to the Watergate, and to my surprise, the Counts answered the door. The group called the Counts. They were the hottest male group in town.
Oh yeah, the Counts. Yeah,
the Counts. So finally, Eddie said, "Come on in, man, come on." And I was surprised he had a room full of people, and that time of night, it was 3-something in the morning, 4-something in the morning. The time was getting late, and we spent the whole night there talking. And Frank, you want to collaborate on a little bit?
Yeah, we did talk to Eddie, and he was saying, telling us, that he was, wanted to use our band to play with, and and as we were talking, he was saying that he was going. Of course, we knew he was going to leave the group, and he actually, asked us if we would be his band. And I said, well, we're talking over with the rest of the fellas, and we got together and we talked with the rest of the guys, and everybody agreed that we would do it. No. And one thing led to another. He sent his music producer down to our rehearsal.
Maurice Green. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and he came to our rehearsal and brought music charts, and we had to, work on the show. And our first show was preparing for the Apollo in New York City. That was our first show with the Supremes, without Diana Ross.
Yeah,
Gene Terrell. Yeah,
yeah.
But it was a great show, But he came and practiced with us, and we got ready. And that was our first gig, the Apollo.
Apollo Theater.
It was a real exciting time, I mean, because we were ready, as a band.
We were beyond ready.
And we got tight doing his music.
Got tighter.
Okay.
Yeah.
So before we explore some more things with your adventures with Eddie Kendricks, Jimmy, this question goes to you. Tell the audience about Skinny Dugans.
Was that me?
Yeah.
Tell the story about Jimmy Dugan.
Skinny Dugans.
Who?
Skinny Dugans, and how you got that name from Melvin Franklin.
Oh yeah, man! Good gracious! I was on Atlantic City Boardwalk, and minding my own business, and just walking, and somebody in back of me said, "Oh, Skinny Dugan." I knew that was Melvin. I said to myself, "Ain't nobody but Melvin Franklin," and I turned around. It was Melvin Franklin. I was much smaller than this now, fellas. Hey. We all gained a few.
Further elaborate on how you got an opportunity to audition for the Temptations for Eddie Kendricks.
Sure.
That's where we were headed with Skinny Dugans.
Well, okay. I thought you want to go from there back to Skinny Dugans. Anyway, I'll reverse the curse. Okay. Okay. I came home one day, one evening, and my wife said, Otis Williams called you from the Temptations. I said, who? Otis Williams. I knew who Otis was. I thought somebody was playing a joke. So he said he'll call me back about 2 hours from then. So 2 hours came, and sure enough, this guy named Otis Williams called me. And I said, hello. And he said, yeah, Jim, this is Jimmy Duggan. I said, indeed it is. He said, we want you to sing with us. And I thought, people messing around on the telephone, man. I said, man, come on, stop playing, man. He said, no, this is Otis Williams of the Temptations. Like I believed it. So I told him, man, I don't believe you, man. So he said, I tell you what, I got somebody who'll call him back, and you'll know it's him. Like I'm supposed to be a genie. So anyway, I hung up, And next thing you know, Melvin Franklin called me. Oh, hello, man. Speak to Jimmy Dugan. I said, whoa, he's speaking. He said, oh, you sound like a drummer. Oh, we want you to sing with us. I said, huh? Me? He said, yeah. He said, well, we got a round trip ticket for you. And I said, I didn't quite believe it, but I want to say I believed it, but something was telling me, man, this somebody had a game on you. So finally, the ticket was in my name. I called the airport. United Flight. I never forget it. United Airlines. I didn't believe it. So finally, what I did, I called 1L. I called 1L. I said, 1L, guess what? Man, I got the opportunity to sing with the Temptations. 1L cried the blues. He said, man, I sure wish you wouldn't go, man. I said,
yeah, I thought it was the wrong idea. I said, this is a bad idea.
But just hear me out. So finally, I said, hey, I gotta go, but my car is here. You pick my car for me, blah blah blah. So he said, yeah, I'll do it. So finally, I called Drummer. Oh boy, did I hear from Drummer. And Drummer was the one who told me it was an honor to go with them. He said, D, it's an honor to go with the Temps, man. Everything was an honor and a privilege, but that particular day and time, it wasn't an honor anymore. He cried the blues, man. Jimmy, man, if you don't go, I wouldn't be in the group. If you didn't, man, you go out and wouldn't know what I was doing, blah, blah, blah. I said, man, wait a minute. Then I said, well, I got to go, man. I got to hang up and go. I said, we got to rehearse. And I had to rehearse. So I hung up. So I was soul searching, boy. To leave these guys who I was with, grew up with, my brothers, to leave them, to go with the Temptations was a mighty choice to make. And I made that decision. That was on a Monday, on a Wednesday. That I made that decision on a Wednesday. I called Otis on the phone and told him personally, Otis, this is Jimmy Dugan. I don't think I'm gonna be able to make it. I think I'm not gonna be able to do it. And he understood. He understood quite well, man.
Tell them why. But tell them why you didn't want to do it.
Why I didn't want to do it? I didn't want to leave my brothers. I didn't want to split from them. Because after all, growing up, I grew up with them. We played together, laughed together, cried together, and played marbles together. We did it all, man. And it was hard leaving that. You take my word, it's hard leaving something that you was embedded with. Just like it took, my soul was leaving. And I just couldn't let that happen. And I said, well, no, I'm coming back home.
Now, this is a little known story for the public, and especially for the people in Washington, D.C. Now, having gone on the road with Eddie Kendricks and touring with him, what was it like going out on those first shows with Eddie? You knew what the kind of acclaim that he had while he was with the Temptations, but he sort of had to work his way back up from the bottom again.
Oh, he did.
So talk a little bit about what that was like.
Well, it was nice. It was bittersweet. Sometimes sweet, sometimes bitter. But anyway, it opened up a lot of doors for us. Well, we had doors open here at home. We had more doors open for us traveling on the road, because where we left one city, the word was spread, go to another city, and people were hearing our name. Young Senators, man, you got to hear them Young Senators with Eddie Kendricks. And it was in articles, newspaper articles and all that. And I was taking clippings out of newspapers, and I have them today. You know, they talked about us, you know, and it was a privilege going out there with Eddie.
So, and being on the road with Eddie, actually, not only were you all singing background for Eddie Kendricks, but you were also spreading the gospel of the music from Washington, D.C.
Yes.
So this would kind of later open the doors to the music industry getting interested in D.C. groups. I know Van McCoy did a lot to help publicize the music from this city. And one of his greatest disappointments was that Washington, D.C. never had a major record label, even though being part of the Mid-Atlantic, it is the biggest record buying and concert ticket buying market in the country. What was at that time, particularly because most worked for the government?
Well, you know, Washington, D.C. did have a record label called Shrine.
Well, no, they had a label. That was Berry Gordy's wife, Winona Gordy Singleton.
Yeah,
But it never
yeah,
had a
yeah.
major label to
Not
come
a
out
major.
of
You're right.
DC.
You're
Never
right.
had a major label. Yet the record industry took a lot of the talent from here. And what I learned from while I was doing record promotion, what I learned from guys like Terrible Turk at a WOK, what I learned from Max Kidd, Bobby Bennett, guys like that, was that we sold more records and we bought more concert tickets. Eddie Kendricks even told me that, hey man, DC is where we come to get our thing off the ground. So what you guys were doing was opening up the eyes
Come on.
of the music industry to the
Mhm.
kind of music that was in DC. I mean, you only have to look at some of the talent that came out of here afterwards. Donny Hathaway, Roberta Flack, the Unifics, the Dynamic Superiors, who ultimately went to Motown.
Yeah.
So let's back up a little bit and tell us about you guys recorded the album "My People Hold On" with Eddie Kendricks. So let's talk a bit about going in the studio and working on that with him.
Who got it?
Well, for me, it was such an honor to be in Motown because we all kind of grew up, not kind of, we all grew up on Motown music, and so to be in Detroit and be in that little pit they call the pit with Frank Wilson and Leonard Caston, it was like they had this kind of machine going on. So they would write the songs, and then they would like present the songs, the skeletons of the ideas of the songs to us. And I would go. We had like 3 or 4 days. Go back to the hotel and like we'd get into it, and then we'd come back to the pit and do the songs. And it was all a conceptual. It was a conceptual album, and you could see it unfolding day by day. It was like this really spiritual, African spiritual message to the people. And it was during the same times when Marvin Gaye was doing his album. I mean, I believe you guys went to Marvin Gaye's house and met him, and talked to him while we were in Detroit. But back to your question, yeah, it was totally a spiritual experience. And for us, we were the first outside band.
Yes, sir.
This is history. We were the first outside band to record
With the Motown artists.
in the Motown studios.
Now let's cover this a bit. I have that album, and I know songs on the album. He was doing spot guest on Soul Train. That was a song called "A Date with the Rain." That was Eddie's Love. Watch out, Jimmy. That was "A Date with the Rain."
Yeah.
Eddie's Love. But let's talk about the influence of "Girl, You Need a Change of Mind."
Yeah,
Let's talk.
yeah.
Who got
That
it?
was a great
I
song.
can take it. Okay, Frank.
Baby girl, you need to change your mind. That song had a great message. It had a groove. We would even do that song as a band separately when we go on the road. I never forget we at the Boston Sugar Shack, and at the
Off Boston Commons, off of Boston Commons. Yeah.
yes sir. And man, we did that song. Girl, you need to change your mind.
Yes,
I never
sir.
forget that night. It was just a special night.
Come on.
I mean, we were cranking. The people were going off. We had people from various colleges there. I mean, it was just a great night. Leroy was
People
blowing
were standing.
like
They
I
were
never
standing
heard
up
it
on the
blow.
chairs and dancing. They were
I mean,
standing up on the chairs.
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
Now,
we were
I'm sorry, go on,
grooving.
Frank.
It was a great night. And that particular night, I'll never forget. I mean, Leroy was just at another level musically. But that was the night that his father went home, to be with the Lord that night. And,
Wow.
and we found out, later on that evening, there was something in the air that night. I mean, the music, just something was special.
Yeah,
you
yeah,
know,
you're right.
Just
about
pump them
that
up.
time at the Sugar Shack.
Well, what I find ironic is that song came out during the height of the women's liberation movement. So what I'd like to know is how did women in the various cities that you played, you would play southern cities, you played Midwestern cities, you played northern cities. What I'd like to know is how did the various women in different cities react to that song?
Well, it was really very accepted because, to say, girl, you need to change your mind, it wasn't really, and it was a positive change.
Mhm.
It wasn't a bad change. It was saying, girl, you need a change of mind. You need to get your mind changed. Raise your consciousness. It wasn't really saying, that you were stupid, but baby, you need a change of mind. And I think the people accepted it. I remember us really. I don't care where we went with that song. We never got a bad report
No.
for that particular
Right.
song. Even though it was a woman's movement at that time, women were trying to be liberated. Well, we were right on it. We agreed that women should be liberated. And
And it was a big club record.
yeah, it was. It was. I mean, people would jam. It just had a bounce. Ba-do. Don't get me to crank it now, but
Thanks to Warnell.
And
Billy B.
another thing that record represented was, back then it was a time factor. On the radio they played, it was songs were like 3 minutes, which was it's complete like that now, but it's like 3 minutes. But the DJs dug it so much because of the music interlude. We broke it down, and then Jimmy did the conga thing, and then it went into a second gear. And the DJs at the time, they dug that, they loved it. And so there's a 7 minute version of the song, and they play on some stations across the United States. They played the whole 7 minutes, which was unprecedented at that particular time.
Would you
And
guys go so
also-
far to say that it was instrumental in the dawning of disco?
Well, that's what a lot of the critics claim.
Yeah.
They claim that it was the beginning of disco because of that outro, and it was. I mean, like clubs in New York, like even to this day, they still play it. You know what I mean? It's like a prerequisite to disco, yeah, for sure.
Now, even though you guys were touring with Eddie Kendricks, on many occasions you guys begin to get separate write-ups of your own. So how did that feel, being recognized as a separate entity, and also not causing any friction with the guy that you were working for?
Well, it felt good. It felt good. Finally, we see our name, the Young Senators, in articles, in newspaper articles. Felt good. And Eddie didn't mind it. He didn't mind it at all.
Okay.
Because he had already made a name for himself. And
Okay.
we were looking.
I'm sorry, Jimmy, go on.
No. And
Go on.
he was looking to us to not say follow him, but be like him. Get interviews, get write-ups. And lo and behold, that's what we got, was write-ups and reviews. And they all were great.
Okay. Here's what I'd like to ask, and I'm sure that the women listening to this podcast will be very, very interested in knowing.
Mhm.
Eddie Kendricks was a very romantic guy on stage. All of us growing up, the girls wanted to go with the Temptations, the guys wanted to be the Temptations. So I'd like to ask you guys, as flamboyant and as flamboyant as he was on stage, what was he like off stage? I myself knew Eddie Kendricks well because I did some work with him, some public relations projects, and I know that he was very sensitive and shy and kind of withdrawn off stage. I want to know, how did you guys see him? And aside from the show business persona, how did you guys relate to him as a person?
Anybody want to take it?
Yeah, he was, like you said, he was very shy and quiet, and at times, and he had a total respect for blackness. You know what I mean? I mean, he wasn't like, yes, go be black. It wasn't like that. He was like, on one particular gig we were on, he kind of stopped the show and asked, why don't we have a black airlines?
Yeah.
It was just like those little things about him that made him such an interesting person. He wasn't a rebel, but like you said, he was shy, and he wasn't braggadocious. He wasn't like, I'm a temptation. You know what I mean? It was like, everywhere he went, he was gracious to everyone. He signed everybody's autographs. There were times when, he would tell us, sometimes the most beautiful woman in the audience is not your biggest fan. Sometimes it's the average person that really is into you, and you have to like reciprocate that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's like he had this real humbleness about him, but at the same time, he was a humongous star. So he handled that. I think he handled that very, very graciously. You know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah.
And
I'd like for each of
I
you to
agree
continue elaborating on that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
I
Jimmy,
also
drummer,
think-
I'd like for each of you to elaborate a little more on that.
well,
How you are related to it personally.
I
Go
think
ahead,
one of
John.
the largest. I think one of the main things we learned from Eddie was he took us to another level. I mean, when Warnell was talking about the first album we recorded with Kendrix, the recording studio pit he was talking about was Hitsville in Detroit. So it gave us a chance to work at a professional studio, Hitsville. We worked at Madison Square Garden. We worked at Carnegie Hall. We worked at large venues with a large audience. We worked at we were the opening act for Sly Stone's wedding at Madison Square Garden, and that was 20,000 people.
Come on,
So
brother.
we got a chance to play for large audiences, and we were the opening act for the Supremes, you know, and so it gave us experience in the musical industry that we really needed to really help our musical presentation. So that was priceless.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Yeah. And this is Frank. And also, I agree with that. You know, he was to me, Eddie was humble. That's the word. He's willing to share his fame, really, because, you know, he treated us good. Eddie had a limousine. You know, we had a limousine. Eddie was in the good hotels. We were in the great hotels.
Good hotels.
He didn't treat us like band members.
No.
He was really a mentor.
Huh?
He was really a mentor.
You know.
They didn't get that kind of treatment. He treated us really good. And if I can be honest, the women loved Eddie Kemp. I don't care what he was singing good.
That's right.
Singing horse. I won't say that. But the women loved him. They just had that love and compassion for him. You know, y'all know it's true. They said, "We love you, Eddie. We love you." They loved him. You know, because he represented a sweetness. It was just something about the anointing that he had. I want to use that word anointing carefully, but he had a charisma. That's a better word.
Yeah.
He had charisma, man, and it was just something warm, and people would feel that from him. And I thought he was a good example. And you're right, drummer. He did take us to places that we wouldn't have gone.
We couldn't have got there.
Yeah.
No.
A lot of people. I thank God for that experience. Hey, myself, I love me some Stevie Wonder, and I got a chance to play with Stevie because of Eddie. You know,
right.
And this is a true story.
Stevie came up on stage.
Garden, Jimmy and drummer can attest. We were in Madison Square Garden, and Stevie Wonder comes in, and I'm playing the organ, and Stevie's sitting right beside me playing a clavinet, another keyboard that I had. And man, we were jamming. This is a true story. And Stevie got happy and knocked my keyboard on the ground.
And broke it.
What I'm gonna do? This is a true story. But Stevie was humble also and said, "Hey man, I'm sorry I broke your clavinet, but and Jimmy, you know this is the truth. I'll give you mine." He came to the hotel at the Hyatt, right?
Wow.
And
Yes,
gave
that's
me
true.
clavinet. And inside it was $1,000 and an album.
Wow.
I can't make it up.
Wait, listen closely now.
Yeah, but tell the rest of the story.
Tell the rest of the story, brother.
It didn't have my name Frank on it though. It had Steve.
The whole truth and nothing but the truth. Come on, brother.
You know what? Let me check. So I did call Steve. I said, "Stevie, thanks for the clap, but there was $1,000 in it, man.
Yeah.
You found it." He said, "Thank you," and I sent it back to him. I did the right thing. He accidentally put the money in there. He was going to travel.
He was saving that money. He's hiding it from people.
And I sent it back to him. Then that
Yes,
Jimmy
sir.
can get a witness. Yeah,
Yeah, you
I
sure
know it's
did.
true.
Yes.
Yeah, I sent
I'm
it back.
I'm sure the audience is enjoying these little behind the scenes stories. I had experience with Eddie Kendricks myself. I had the pleasure of going down to his hometown in Birmingham, Alabama, and so I can share with you guys also too what his attitude was in terms of blackness, because some of the things that he endured. You know, you got to remember Birmingham Bull Connors and that whole civil rights movement, and
Mhm.
so I understood how he felt about a lot of things in terms of racial strife and racial strides. I had the pleasure of putting him with Richard Arrington, the first African American mayor of Birmingham. Also put him with Governor Favre James, and I did a number of public relations projects with him, as well as spending some time in his house, meeting his family, and particularly his mother and father. So he, unfortunately, as we know, Eddie Kendricks died. So Jimmy, tell us about the smoking.
Oh, he died of lung cancer. And before he passed, I had the privilege of talking with him. And, I said all I could say, but I remember one time talking with him. I said, Eddie, you remember when your cigarettes come up missing? He said, yeah. Well, I said, well, it was me that took those cigarettes and threw them away. I was trying to get him to stop smoking, but to no avail. He wouldn't stop. And quite naturally, everybody knows he died of lung cancer. And behind him dying of lung cancer, I formed the Eddie Kendricks Memorial Foundation Incorporated to go out and talk about smoking and we shouldn't smoke and this and that. And the rest is history.
Yeah, well, Jimmy, while you're touching on that, and right here, I want to give a shout out to
Mhm.
Miss Kathy Hughes, because when Jimmy and I first started Eddie Kendricks Day, she was very gracious to invite us on her morning show. Also to Jerry Phillips, who had us on DC, Washington. And so now that we've covered that and we've kind of given you guys some history and took you back, now we're going to bring you forward. So we're going to invite another guest on the show who started out as we did, promoting R&B music, but ultimately did some things in terms of promoting go-go. Before we do that, I also want to give honor to Max Kidd.
Yes, sir.
Max Kidd is known as the
Yes.
godfather of go-go. But I have to say this again: don't bombard the place with calls and messages. Max Kidd did not start his career in go-go. Max Kidd and Al Jefferson, a retired disc jockey who had worked at all of the radio stations in the area, started a company called Al and the Kid Promotions. And I worked at Al and the Kid with Max and also another good buddy, hell of a promotion guy, as well as a singer, John Beauchard. And what happened, how Max got involved with go-go, was, as happens in the music industry, every couple of years, there's a scandal. Those of us in the industry, you know what kind of scandals we mean. So with one of those recent scandals happening again, all of the major record companies stopped using independent promoters. And so Charlie Stevenson, as I said, was managing EU, and he had sort of like a lock on advising the other go-go bands in the area. But Max Kidd started promoting go-go, got it acceptable to getting more radio play, and he became known as the godfather of go-go in DC. But basically, Max Kidd started out promoting. He was a singer actually with a group called 5 Miles High. He hooked
Right.
up with Al Jefferson. The gentleman that brought me into the music industry was a gentleman by the name of Ron Early, who our next guest will also talk about him being responsible for his success. And so Max and I promoted R&B music, and we worked for Kenny Gamble's Philly International Records. We worked a lot of the independent labels. And when that was over, Max started promoting go-go. So having said that, now we'll welcome our next guest, a very young, energetic, and prolific young man who takes the time to study the history of the music that we're promoting, and that's Mr. Bo Sampson.
You on, Bo?
Hello, Bo. Welcome to the
Mic is on.
podcast.
His mic is muted.
Okay, well,
His mic
while
is
they're
not on.
unmuting his mic, Bo Sampson, when we were promoting records, Bo would always be around. And he wanted to learn the business. He was very anxious to learn the business and very enthusiastic. One thing you'll learn about this business, and I'm sure a lot of the veterans that may be listening to this podcast will attest to, when you come into this business and you're energetic and you're everywhere, you're into everything, and then
Can
you
you
fade
hear me?
away, you looked at as just a flash in the pan.
Can you hear
So
me?
the thing is to
Yeah.
come into this business,
Yes.
establish yourself, stay consistent, keep your word, and always be known for getting the job done. Bo,
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear
Yes,
you.
we can.
Big, fat, short, and tall. We love you all. Hey, the beat don't stop. Now, what I can't understand is how did I get on this podcast and people say I ain't got no job? I can't understand it because I'm with legends. These guys are legends right here.
Thank you.
I
Thank
mean, the bottom line is like Ed said, I was able to get into business because of people like Ed Hines and Ron Early. They taught me the business. And one of the reasons I'm on this call, I guess, is because I love history. And people really need to know that this exists. I mean, this story needs to be in the African American Museum. This needs
Thank
to be
you.
worldwide, you know.
Thank
It's
you.
a lot of talent in DC, you guys, that get lost. But the problem is they don't know the history. And
Yes.
this is really important to know that this go-go thing, you guys contributed. Now, Miss Kathy Hughes, who you just mentioned, the people that had not seen the documentary, The Beat Don't Stop, I was fortunate enough with Miss Kathy Hughes to be one of the executive producers. And Tracy and Deirdre were executive producers too. And we made sure we had to mention the senators because people don't know. There's no way you can get to the next level and you don't have an example. I had example, Ed had example, everybody had example. But you know, DC has to work together. We have as much talent as anywhere in the country. You look at the go-go bands like Trouble Funk, like T-Bone and Go-Go Mickey and Jungle Boogie and Mighty Mo, the Pump Blenders. I mean, all the go-go bands, you guys are responsible of spreading this word to see where the originator of this music is coming from.
Thank you.
And you guys have done this, man. I've done my research. And even though we didn't get to feature you guys the way we wanted to, it's so many stories. Anybody that wants to be in the business, they got to know this is historical. I mean, you guys work with the Temptations, but not only work with the Temptations, you started a genre of music that you get no credit for. And that's not fair. And we love Chuck. We know Chuck contributed and took the torch and ran with it. But at the end of the day, there's a backstory for everything.
Come on now.
Everybody that takes credit for something might not be the originator of the idea.
Oops.
hey, hello,
Oops. Who told
hello,
you?
hello,
Who
hello.
told you?
Hey, it's all about the hype. Look at that Popeye's chicken sandwich everybody trying to get.
Oops.
Hey, man, it was hype on it. It might not have been the best sandwich. Then somebody copied it. But you know, my thing is, my mission and everybody that's listening to this podcast, I want everybody not only to record it, you need to spread this to all you fans, all you people that want to be in the entertainment business. We got to know our history from the Al Johnsons, the Stacey Lattisaw, the Johnny Gills. Al Johnson was a legend. You know,
Genius.
so many other people
Genius.
that have done stuff. You know, the old school groups. You know, everybody needs to tell. You guys want to be DC want to be the entertainment, the capital, but you guys got to work together. You know, we got to be able to spread this. We're not just the capital of the world. We trying to get to be the capital of entertainment, whether it's comedy, whether it's music, whether it's acting. Why you got to move to Atlanta, LA, and New York and say you're not from DC to get in the clique? We should be able to do it. I mean, I give Miss Kathy Hughes a lot of credit because she stayed here and she's tried to do as much as she can. And Ed Hines knows it, Jimmy, the whole band and everything. So, you know, my thing is I want to be able to use this. So everybody that's on here, we need you to spread this podcast to everybody that didn't get on here and learn the game. You can't be in the game if you don't know the game. And it's a lot of behind the scenes things that happen in this business. You know what I'm saying? You know, and my job as being a fan of this group is to spread the message. I mean, you guys should have a street. What do you think, Ed? Man,
I think
Yes,
so.
indeed.
I think so.
Man,
I
man.
agree.
You know, these guys started the Howard Theater. You created a genre of music that was a call and response. We got people right now coming in town taking our music, with the secret recipe, and put it in their meal. They got a category now on the Grammys. Yes,
Bo,
sir, Mr. Hines.
Bo,
Yes,
stay
sir.
right there. Stay right there. Because I was gonna get to the point of
Man.
where you were working with New Edition, and they had a splinter group, Belle Biv and DeVoe.
Yes,
And you
sir.
had the pleasure of promoting the R&B harmony as well as the hip hop sound. Again, because of Ron Early, I worked the first the first rap record, which was Rapper's Delight by the Sugar Hill Gang. We couldn't get it played on the radio, and nobody thought it would last. And now it dominates the industry. But you said something else about people coming to Washington, D.C. Again,
give another shout out to my partner. Just a second. I think I'm on.
Yeah, he went on.
Yeah. Well, what I think Ed was trying to say is basically, I mean, we have to continue to spread this, not just the fact. We should be, you ready, Ed? You back in? Okay. We have to use the genre of music that we created. This is our music. The official music of Washington, D.C. is go-go. But everybody got to take a part in it. Everybody got to work together. And, you know, I'm not trying to plug anything, but I got a book that's coming out, and I'm trying to, put everybody on, because it's behind the scenes. They're road managers. They're guys like Maniac McLeod, that broke records, DJ Coop, man, CeeLo. It's a lot of people, the young and the old, that have done a whole lot of things that people don't know. And we need to try to kind of brag and take pride and stick our chests out that we have as much talent in the country as anybody. And Jimmy, one thing I wanted to know, man, back in the day, did the men dance on one side and the women dance on the other side? Did they dance together? The young generation don't even know how to get the phone number no more. Hey man, that's how you get the number, you dance with the young lady. Because I know the style. What was the style in the dances back there, Jimmy? Do you know? What was the dance back there, man? Or I think you're on mute too, Jimmy.
You're on mute.
Yeah,
Jimmy,
you're on mute. Hit the bottom at the bottom, not your screen, Jimmy. Jimmy, you're on mute. Yep, you're on mute. Okay, Ms. Ellison, come in. Okay, all right. But, the bottom line is, you back on, Ed?
I'm back on.
Let's go, baby. Let's go. Let's do it.
So what I wanted to say, touching on what Bo did in terms of work with New Edition and also the hip hop of Belle Biv and DeVoe, I have to give another shout out to my dear friend Linda Wills.
Yes, ma'am.
Linda Wills was responsible for putting Salt and Pepper with EU. Linda Wills was also responsible for putting Dougie Fresh with Rare Essence.
Yes.
Aside from all of the R&B music that she worked, and she worked for Schwartz Brothers, which had almost every independent label that didn't have a major distributor. So again, as I say, with the Max Kids, the Linda Wills of the world, the Ron Earlys, guys like Bo Sharp, who you never hear of. You guys know him from Singing with Halo and The Intruders, but Bo is one hell of a promotion man. Woo! And so I just want to bring recognition to all of these unrecognized people.
That's
and
right.
I just hope that you guys are getting from this podcast what it took some of us 30 and 40 years to learn.
That's right.
Yes, sir.
And Linda Wills taught me how to sneak in the daggone radio station, man. I used to watch, and Linda Wills walk around and do a little move. She always look good and stuff. So, she throw people off. Bam, then she get that record on, boy. I used to laugh like crazy, man. I had to learn how to do that.
Here's my favorite story about Linda. Linda, at one time, I was the only promotion man in Washington, D.C. that didn't have a car. So Linda and I would ride to Baltimore on Mondays, and sometimes I would catch a cab to the radio stations on Tuesday. Sometimes I would get to Turk Station and I didn't have money to get to the other stations, I would go in Turk's office and borrow the money from him to go to the competing station. But here's the story about Linda and myself. I'm not going to call the guy's name because I don't know what industry he's in right now.
Man.
But Bo, you remember there was a certain guy at WHUR who only wanted to spend time with people from major labels. So Linda and I at the time were working independent, and they changed the format to where you had to have an appointment for record promotion day. And so we're sitting in the lobby of WHUR. Linda Wills picks up the phone and calls the guy and say, "Look, so-and-so, you can't spend all day back there with people from the majors. There's other people out here trying to get records played." And then turned around and looked at me and said, "Eddie, I don't have an appointment." I said, "Linda, take half of mine." When we walked into the guy's office, he looked at us and said, "This is the last thing I need on Tuesday morning. Linda Wills, who cannot take no for an answer, and Ed Hines, if you give him a dime, he'll give you $1 worth of work."
That's good.
But we became known for getting the job done in the music industry.
Hey, Ed, I want to mention another thing, too. Another historian that has copied everything is this boy, Augie Ogburn.
Without a doubt. Hey, Augie.
Augie is off the chain. He got everything.
Yes,
there's a lot of people like Tony Winger, Joe Gorham, Brute Bailey. Of course, we're going to send an RIP to Mr. Bobby Bennett.
Of course.
And look, there's one historical, and I don't know if Jimmy knows about it, but the Nighthawk was legendary, wasn't he, Jimmy?
Yeah.
Yes, he was. Yeah,
Bob Cherry.
Well, don't forget those guys now.
One question I want to ask that hasn't been asked. How did the Young Senators name become the Young Senators?
Good one.
Great question.
Frank?
Well, we were called beforehand the Dimensions. And then Harry Young, we were talking with Harry Young, and even though that was his last name, but we were a group from DC, and DC was kind of a political town. So instead of, and we used to actually play for some of the senators, Senator Proxmire, and a lot of the other places. We worked college gigs, but it came because we were from DC, and DC being a political town, and we're young. So from that, we were the Young Senators.
Question answered. Thank you.
I got a question for you. I wanted to know, I think I mentioned just a few minutes ago, what was the dance that they were doing back then? Out off of the jungle, and how were they dancing in go-gos?
If I had the answer to that, you would know.
I have an answer for it. Bo.
Okay.
They were doing like this kind of two-step from your front leg to your back leg, and everybody talks about Chuck Brown playing over the breaks. Here's the deal. Now, most of the people will say that they were replacing the disc jockeys who could seg one record into the other. But the other thing is, and nobody wanted to mention it, was that the young people were smoking Love Boat and Angel Dust. And when the music stopped, they kept on dancing. So Chuck Brown standing on stage.
Is that what
you can smell it? So Chuck Brown realized, man, I got to do something to keep this beat going. So he started rapping over the break. But hold on for a second. We have a very important guest waiting to come on the line. And we have to contact. I'm getting a note that her camera's off. We're going to have a very, very special historian come on the line, and a person from a very prestigious university. As soon as we can get her on the line, so bear with us, please. Hold on a second.
There she is.
Is she on?
She's on.
Okay, let me introduce you to Professor Portia K. Maltby. And Professor Maltby is a professor emeritus of ethnomusicology and folklore and the Department of Folklore at the University of Indiana in Bloomington, Indiana. She is also the founding director of the Archives of African American Music and Culture and founding director of the International Soul Review. She's also the senior scholar for the inaugural exhibition for the National Museum of African American Music that's just recently been built in Nashville, Tennessee. So welcome to the podcast. I call her Dr. Portia. Welcome to the podcast, Dr. Portia.
Hey, thank you, thank you. It's such a pleasure to be here, and I have certainly enjoyed the discussion about the young senators. I learned a lot. I was unaware of this early history, and I want to ask you: was this podcast recorded?
I'm sure that it is, or we'll make it available, Dr. Portia, because I will send it expressly to you to be included into the archives of African American music and culture.
It definitely needs to be included there. There are some wonderful gems dropped this evening, and I really, really enjoyed that. Yeah, well, I have a question for you. I'm curious as to you spoke of starting in joining individually, and so were you initially I get the impression you were initially a vocal group. Were you ever a doo-wop group without the accompanying instruments?
Well, Frank Hooker and myself used to sing in a singing group together.
And I was as well. Yeah.
Okay.
That was my beginnings.
Yeah, so we brought that experience of a singing group into a band. We were I guess the first ones to do it. Yes. We just incorporated the singing. I did something. I don't know what I did.
You're fine. You're fine.
You're fine, Jimmy. You're still here.
Okay, but I can't see nothing.
Well, just keep talking. We see you.
Okay. We see you.
We see you.
Well, it started with a singing group. We was in a group called the Trojans, Frank Hook and myself. And one day, one of the singers, John Knight, got drafted, went to the Army, and we couldn't find nobody to replace him. It was four of us: Salim Hilton, Frank Hooker, John Knight, and myself, four of us. And the group just withered apart. You just withered apart. And that's when Frank joined the group, the band, and got me in and joined the band. So we joined the band to bring that type of singing along with us. And that's how we got to do that. Mm-hmm.
So earlier you mentioned that your arrangements were very unique. Can you describe that? What made them unique specifically?
Our way, our style. You know, the way we played is each individual had their own set style. And Warnell, the bass player, he had a style on the bass could nobody duplicate it. And we just incorporated all of that into one. You know, just incorporate into a big bag of stew, like you make stew, and put everything, all the ingredients in the stew, and we stirred it around. And that's what we came up with. And we did it.
There was, people like Leroy, he had some theory, the knowledge of theory, music theory. And, it was almost like we all made contributions. For instance, we would take like MacArthur's Park, and we would take and break it down into parts, and then interject something a little bit different, or a little bit different chord structure, or a little bit different rhythmic pattern in each of the arrangements. So that made it our own. And it almost made it into a new song, which I think that was the magic. That was what made people really get into the young singers, because they wanted to know, so what are they going to do next? How are they going to arrange? What are they going to arrange next? That's different. So I think that was the magnet and the impetus for us being a unique group of singers and musicians.
And is that what led to that sound, like the song Jungle, that clearly had those ingredients that became central to go-go, the conga, the bass style? Was that something that you were working towards, or it was just your individual creativity coming together collectively, and it ended up being that kind of sound?
Yes, it was our individual collective creating the sound. No, there was no one person going, well, you play this, you play this. It was an agreement. It was, it was a democratic kind of situation where we all agreed that this was the right feeling and this was the right texture for the music.
And was that the kind of sound that is present on Jungle that you were doing with the remakes of other songs as you covered other songs? Is that the same sound or?
Yeah, that was a completely different animal. That was something that came about from us just being who we were, and it just kind of just fell in. Everything just fell into place. It wasn't like we dissected the song. It was like it just, like Jimmy said, it just fell into place. So that was a different kind of structure and a different kind of animal. And a lot, like I said, the call and response took place in the studio. That was not planned. That was just
Spontaneous.
us. Yeah, it was just us being us.
Yeah, and there's a certain amount of creativity that comes when guys come together on one purpose and on one accord.
True.
That's a serious
True.
piece in music, where you can get all minds together, in their groove, and we were all together with that mind. That's when the creativity, and if I can say it, the heavenly creativity comes in.
All
We
praises.
all
Yeah.
in together.
Yeah,
The
yeah.
2 or 3 gathered together. Something about, some people call it a magic, some people call it creativity, but it's like something happens when we come together and we could create. That's why we would rehearse a long time. It wasn't work. It was enjoyment, because we were feeding each other. I was playing the rhythm organ. I was establishing one there on that bass. It was funky. It was down in the bottom. The bass felt like a real bass. Then we had the horn section. Popping. People and then would be popping, and Jimmy on the Congo drums, the drummer with the groove. I mean, it was us just locking in and really becoming one. Putting minds together. Yeah.
Hey, can I say something, Miss Patricia?
Yes, sure.
Yes,
Dr.
ma'am.
Portia.
Oh, I'm sorry, Dr. Portia. Some people want to know how Jimmy started percussion, and then Jimmy, also, can you let people know that you have been recognized by the mayor's office? I think you have a certificate. Can you elaborate on that?
Yes, sir. I have proclamations for every mayor that we had in the city of Washington. Going our way back to, thank you. Going our way back to Marion Barry. It's just all the mayors that they not acknowledged us, the young senators, and I appreciated that.
Okay.
I appreciated that. And they're on my wall right now at home.
Okay. We're going to bring another guest on, but before we do that, Dr. Portia Mosby, I'd like for you to elaborate on the work that you've done with regard to your interviews on the business and creative side of the music industry, so that younger people can even go online, which is basically how we met. How I met Dr. Portia, I ran across her material online, and I realized this lady has interviewed everybody that I've been mentored by. And so we contacted each other, and we started to working together on some things. And I arranged for her. She had already done one person who has not been mentioned on this podcast, the godfather of promotion men, and who was my musical godfather after Ron Early introduced him to me. Ron Early was my first protege, introduced me to Joe Medlin. Woo! So, Dr. Portia, can you elaborate a little bit on how you met Joe Medlin and your work, what your work entailed after that or during that time?
Well, I became interested in what I would call the business behind the music upon meeting Jack Gibson, known as Jack the Rapper at the time. I'm from Orlando, Florida, and Jack Gibson was based here. And on one of my trips home, someone said, "I have someone you must meet." And it was him. And they took me to his place, and I saw what he was doing, and he was telling me about his conventions and all of that. And I said, "Yeah, I'm very interested in coming." So I attended the Jack the Rapper convention. That was my first entree. And then shortly after that was the formation of the Black Music Association, and I
BMA.
that BMA with Kenny Gamble and so that's when I started going to the industry meetings, and I said, wow, this is the best kept secret of all times. And of course, you were part of the industry, but it was like your own organization,
Yeah.
which others did not have privy to.
Yeah.
And I was just fascinated by what I was seeing, what I was hearing, learning, going to the seminars, and I said, then these individuals need to be acknowledged for the
Yes,
work that
yes,
they're
Dr.
doing,
Bush.
and because the artists wouldn't be artists without you. It's as simple as that.
And Dr. Portia, I would like to elaborate.
No, but wait a minute. But let her tell you about what she did. So, Dr. Bush, tell them about what you did when
So
you
I
took leave from your job.
Yeah, so I went on sabbatical, and I spent the entire year just interviewing the varying individuals, because I'm sort of a historian as well. I've always had an interest in history. I like knowing how something began. I don't like starting in the middle of the story. So I want to see how it began, who were the players, and what were the circumstances that they had to deal with.
And you moved into Joe Medlin's office.
Right, and so that during that particular year, I was based in Philly because I was doing Kenny Gamble in that group in Philly, and then in New York, and I would go to New York for 2 or 3 weeks, come back and forth, and that's when I met Joe, and I met Joe at Jack the Rapper. I said, I'm going to be on leave, and I want to interview you, and it was really interesting. He turned me on to everybody else. And I found it. Then he said I could use his office as my base, and then I interviewed. I remember following. He hired independent producers. Independent promoters. I remember one guy. His name was Mel Williams, and I remember following him around, looking at how he did this. And so after being there almost a year, Joe never was available yet for an interview. I said, "Okay, Joe, I've interviewed everybody else. What about you?" And then he says, okay, now that you understand all of this, we can have an interview. And I have a really wonderful interview with him. It's in the archives. It's available. And the same thing, the other legend I met was Dave Clark. Spent a lot of time with Dave Clark.
The granddaddy promotion man.
Yeah, the granddaddy. And what I was able to do with all of these interviews was in the National Museum of African American Music. I insisted. I said I was the lead senior scholar on that project, and so I was able to lay out some of the topics that we needed to cover in the museum, and this was one of them. I said we really need to introduce these individuals behind the scenes to the general public, and so I curated a section that's called "The Business Behind the Music." And so the focus is on the early pioneers, the late 60s through, I think we go up to about 90. So whenever you're in Nashville, you really should visit this museum, National Museum of African American Music, and look specifically at the business behind the music. And we're going to do more. This was simply an introduction. And my approach was to pair the industry executive with an artist, so that people would go over because they recognize the artist, but then they're going to understand the people who are behind the artist. Mm-hmm. So it's been a well received, that section in the museum.
Well, thank you, Dr. Portia, and stay right there because we're going to welcome on a guest who we had hoped to have a little earlier, but it looks like he's made himself available now. So, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the podcast, Mr. Charles Stevenson.
Well, good evening.
Good evening.
Hey, Charlie.
Hey, Charles.
Hey, is that you?
That would be me, Charlie.
Man, you got all that white hair, man.
I'm older, Charlie. I didn't want to put these glasses on, but I couldn't see. So, Charlie, I covered a few things briefly about you and your relationship with Dr. Calvin Rollard and Miss Wilhelmina Rollard, and talked about how you fought for go-go bands in the early years. So, and also how you were the manager of the first manager of EU. And I was talking to Linda Wills yesterday, and she was telling me about a record company you guys had where you had Black Sheep, Lauren Flack, Roberta Flack's sister. So can you talk about your early forays into managing go-go?
Well, God, going way back. I mean, the reason I got into it is because I was doing community organizing in Southeast. And one evening, my best friend and I heard some music across the hall from where I was living at the time, and we knocked on the door, and the gentleman let us in. And it was Sugar Bear, Andre, Lucas, Donald Fields, and a couple other guys. They were just practicing, and we expressed interest in what they were doing. And so here's how it went down. So we expressed interest, and they asked my friend who went in with me to manage them, if he would manage them. He said, "No, I won't, but I'll help Charles." So that's how I got involved. I got involved as a community organizer because I couldn't tell those young brothers no. How could I tell them no? If I'm in the community trying to work with young people to better their lives, I couldn't tell these young brothers no. So that's how I actually got into management. And those young brothers ended up being EU Experience Unlimited. And Eddie, the rest is history. Started with them. And since we're talking about the Young Senators was probably one of the first groups that EU tried to pattern themselves after. Guys talk about this, but they were a very high energy, exciting group. And I was talking to Jimmy the other day. You guys kind of remind me of Sly and the Family Stone.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
We kind of patterned after them. So, to make a long story short, I got into it, working with young people. And as I continued to work with EU, I was working in Southeast House, directed this clerical skills program. They said, hear these young kids talk about going to a go-go. And I had just moved to DC, New York, and the whole terminology of go-go was kind of foreign to me. I just asked these youngsters what they meant by a go-go. And it ended up they were just going to a dance. They were just calling it the go-go. And I think Third Manor was the first time that I actually heard saw and heard the youngsters playing with Chuck Brown. I think it was a Monday night.
Thank you, baby.
And I went to heaven. And talk about whatever. I mean, Joe, the whole crew that you guys had back in the day, y'all were just fantastic. I just could not see the sound and the energy of that band.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So, Charlie,
I have a question. What year did you come in contact with EU?
1971. This year we're actually celebrating 50 years of music.
Hey, excuse me, Charles. I got a question. Hey, Charles, tell them about this great book you got, and the next one is coming out.
Well, come on now. I co-authored with Kip Lornell a book entitled. We have two editions entitled. The second was called "The Beat: Go-Go Music from Washington D.C." And in this particular book, Dr. Portia, we chronicled the rise of go-go, and we go all the way back, actually before the Senators, Black Heat, Aggression, those bands, I think, laid the platform for now what we call go. Those were the pioneers. And we just talked about the historical development of music. We talked about the social struggles the music had gone through. We talked about the popularity that some of these bands, Chuck Brown, Acid, of course, EU, Funk, and others. So you can find the book on Amazon.
Oh, that's the new cover.
Let me see it.
We got the old one.
That's the original.
Actually, the second edition.
Go-go. Okay, the Beat Go-Go Music from Washington D.C. Okay, I got it. I'm gonna write that down.
Right.
So, Charlie, just very briefly, everybody takes it for granted now with go-go being so widely accepted. And of course, we've had a few issues here lately with, the situation on 7th and Florida. Don't mute the sound.
Mhm.
But tell us a little bit, because we're going to have to, Tony, we got a very special celebration for somebody before we end the broadcast. But can you just elaborate maybe for the next 2 or 3 minutes on some of the struggles that you went through with early go-go?
Well, go through, I tell you, it was walking on fire, because early on, because when drugs in the 80s really ravaged Washington, D.C., city leaders tried to blame that on go-go music, and we had to fight. And as you remember, tried to tab us with being the reason why drugs and violence were increasing in Washington, D.C. Now, we all know it was a societal problem during that period, and go-go was just as a scapegoat, and we had to stand up. We had to work with these young bands, these young their fans, in order to stand up against the curfew, because they tried to pass a curfew to shut down the band. They tried to pass legislation to shut down the venues.
Yes.
Actually, and at one point, probably in the mid-90s, it was very difficult for local bands, if they call themselves go-go bands,
To play. Yeah.
in Washington, D.C. It got to be that bad.
Wow.
And it really, I'm telling you, man, it was a perseverance of people like Bo and others involved that eventually led to go-go being able to stay around and to be perpetual, because there was many efforts to shut this music.
And don't forget about Dr. Roloff and Ms. Roloff and how supportive they were.
Yeah, look here. Now, you talk about Dr. Roloff. Dr. Roloff was a pioneer. I mean,
That's my man.
Dr. Roloff embraced what we were doing when no one else in the city would. And matter of fact, as you remember, Ed, we sponsored the Malcolm X Day celebration.
Right.
Which
Malcolm X Park.
No, it was Anacostia Park.
Yeah, but you also did some things in Malcolm X Park.
Well, Malcolm X Park was African Liberation Day.
Okay, all right.
Did go-go music in Malcolm X Day at Anacostia Park.
Right.
Brought in Jesse Jackson, Dick Gregory.
Right.
The leaders.
And don't forget,
Bobby brought them all. And
don't.
Talk to the young people that everybody claimed they were trying to save, but didn't talk to them. But we actually brought them in Southeast. But it was because of these go-go bands that we were able to bring 50,000 people in the park. And the longest time, we had the largest celebration on Malcolm X in the nation. And matter of fact, I would also say that I think it was our efforts that had something to do with Spike Lee deciding to do Malcolm X.
Hello.
Okay.
Hello.
I think it was
Also, Charles, what about Daryl Brooks?
Well, Daryl Brooks. I mean, look at
Daryl Brooks and Carol and Gerald.
Daryl Brooks and Carol Kirkendall in terms of being able to mesh social identity with music and culture. They did it. Remember, they had Human Kindness Day.
Yeah.
They had a problem with that, but they did always supported local music. And then they had to stop doing Human Kindness Day and start doing concerts.
Well, with the Human Kindness Day was also very instrumental in getting Martin Luther King's birthday declared a national holiday.
That's right.
I've been no doctor. If Carol Kirkendall, again, we're talking about how you mesh the cultural movement with the political movement, and they were able to do by getting Stevie Wonder to be out. And every year, man, it was cold on January 15th. We would be out there, and we marched, and then eventually Dr. King's birthday became a national holiday. Now, again, Ed, you bring up a very good point. I don't think it would have happened had not Dal and Carol been warriors and been able to figure out how do you mobilize folks in our community. Well, you got to use the culture and combine that with the political movement, and there you go. And they did that.
Charlie, you are the master politician. You are the master politician, Charlie.
I'll tell you, this is such a joy. When I came with your face, I said, yeah.
We go back. We go back.
And look at, man, look at, but before you go, I gotta say this. They talk about the young senators, because the young senators, I'm so glad you're doing this, because they gotta get their flowers, right now. I mean,
Right.
Thank you, Charles.
I said this to Jimmy, that they were the pioneers. It was on their backs that Chuck and the rest of us, EU, Red S's back,
There you go.
we continue, because they set the groundwork. Now, they set a high standard, and Jimmy, I think we met that. I mean, I think
Yes.
that the groups followed that. And now you may not know this, but Sugar Bear patterned itself after what else?
One L.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I have an
One
interesting
L.
story. I have an interesting story. I'm based in Tokyo. I'm based in Tokyo, and I'm doing a tour. This was like the late '90s, and Sugar Bear and the group came over, and we were at the same studio, but I didn't know he was there. I'm walking out to get a drink of soda or something like that, and he goes 1L, and I'm going, what? And so they were playing in Tokyo, and they have actually a big following over here. Chuck as well.
So you left and you went overseas, right?
Yeah, I live in Tokyo.
You live in Tokyo, but I want you to know that you were really Sugar Bear's first musical idol.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, we kind of regard them. We kind of regard them as our children.
The teenage senators. Hey, the teenage senators.
Look at the point is that the people, man, that you started something that's still, today. It's perpetual.
Well, I'm honored. I'm honored that you said that, and I really appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah.
Hey, Charles, real quick.
Yeah.
Can you name like Sugarfoot, Rick, and all those people? I'm sure they had some. The senators had some influence on people like that, because this guy played with Miles Davis, and the drummer from. Can you elaborate on that?
Ricky's father, was one of the first drummers for Chuck. So I'm sure that Sugarfoot's father played with Chuck before.
Chuck in the building.
Jimmy, before
Chuck.
Before Ricky, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, it was close, and then of course you got after that, you got the Jews and all the drummers today. But I think that pattern, again, I said, was started back with the Senators. Man, the Senators, that group they were fantastic, man. It was just.
Thank you.
Looking at them, you just knew you were looking at something that was incredible. They were. They made you feel like you were at a major event every time they played.
Every time we stepped on stage.
That's right.
Okay, so we're going to have to start wrapping up here, because, like I said, we have one little major celebration to do before we end this. So I'd like to go through each individual and everybody take a moment to tell about what they're currently working on, or what they're doing that we can look forward to in the future. Let's start with our esteemed guest, Professor Portia K. Malsby.
She's on mute.
I think you're muted, Dr. Portia.
She's still on mute.
I'm on.
Yeah, she's on.
Dr. Portia, we're wrapping up with everybody giving just a little bit of their current endeavors and what the future holds for them. Well, we can look forward from them in the future.
Well, for me, I'm working on a book project dealing with the globalization of African American music with the focus on gospel music, and I'm looking at the Netherlands as a case study. I spent over 15 years back and forth looking at how they're treating, their performance of gospel in its authentic style, and it's a fascinating study, and that's what I'm working on.
Okay, Bo?
Yes, I'm working on a book. It's mainly because I'm a behind the scenes guy, and the name of the book is "What Does Bo Do?" So basically, I'm just telling what I do behind the scenes. I'm going to bring some people along with me, because there are other parts of the business, like what you guys have done, and Ed, and the photographers, the makeup people, the engineers. So I'm highlighting people not only from this area but all over the country, so it can be a directory for people to know that it takes more than one person.
Good. Charlie?
Well, I'm working on another book. I'm working on a book entitled Cranking, The Essential Guide to Go-Go Culture. That's going to be published by Georgetown Publishing. I'm working on the book along with Alona Witowski and Cato, Take Me Out to the Go-Go. We all three are collaborating.
Cato Hammond.
Hammond. We all collaborating on this book. This book will be much different than The Beat. We're gonna have shorter stories, and we're gonna have vibrant pictures, a lot of illustrations. It's gonna be more of a coffee table book. It's gonna be a book that you can pick up if you don't know anything about go, and in 30 minutes you'll have a refresher course. You'll know. So
Okay.
of course, we're gonna cover the bands of the early days up to today. We cover all the principles, the promoters, the sound guys, the super fans, the venues. So anyway, in about 300 pages, we'll give you a snapshot of what goes.
Okay, Jimmy, Frank, and Warnell and drummer. Young Senators Reloaded.
I have an album, an EP out that I released last year called Faster Forward, and I have another smooth jazz band that I'm working with called The Edge, and we do kind of smooth jazz. And also, I teach. I teach vocals at the school called TASI, the Art of Singing Institute in Tokyo.
Okay, we're gonna have I'm sorry.
All the time.
Jimmy.
Yes.
Frank.
And
we have one more guest coming on, so we're gonna have to keep it rolling.
I'm getting ready to write a book. Period.
Excellent.
Okay.
Frank.
Yes, sir. Can you hear me?
What's happening in your life besides nothing but the gospel?
Yeah, I am doing some gospel. Hear the word, hear the word, hear the word. And my daughter, she has a project out called I Believe in Me. It's a great song, nominated for a Grammy already. And it's called I Believe in Me. Nikia Marie, that's her name. So she's really doing good. Then I'm also working on some material myself. From the spiritual side, I think we need some songs now because of the COVID. People need to, be uplifted. So I'm doing that now also, and working on finishing that. But most of all, I'm working with my daughter, Nikia Marie. She's doing really good now.
Okay. Well, I'm going to be working on a lot of things that I'm not even going to go into now. Just keep your eye open on my Facebook page, Ed Hines on Facebook. We're gonna have another guest to come on, Eleanor Hooker.
I'm doing that now.
Heron, who is Frank Hooker's cousin, and who was a prime moving force behind the Young Senators when they first started out. Eleanor, take it away, babe.
I just want to say congratulations to you guys. I remember when I don't have enough time to tell all your little stories and things that I know about you.
Glad you kept it to yourself.
I'm
really proud of you, and I'm so glad that you all are doing this because you need to be known. Your story needs to be told. So I'm really excited to be on here with you guys. I remember when I went and chose a few, and we just had fun at Mr. P's and all over the city. So congratulations, guys. I love you much. And thanks for letting me in and on. I had a lot of your friends ready to come on, but we had technology issues. But I'm glad they got to record them before the show. So take care, everybody. Love you, Jimmy and Frank and Cornell, everybody. God bless you. And I love you.
Love you back.
Love it, baby.
Now we have a particular friend who has a special day today. So everybody from your individual posts, join us in singing happy birthday to Frank Hooker. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Frank. Happy birthday to you.
Thank you, guys. Thank you.
And thank you all for joining us.
God bless.
God bless. God bless you all too.
And good night, all.
Good night. Bye-bye.